Hi everyone, and welcome to the F1 Time Portal, an F1 history podcast by two Formula One nerds. I'm your host, Rosa.
And I'm your other host, Luigi. And today we're going to talk about 1956. So let's go. So, like Alfa Romeo, Mercedes has withdrawn from Formula One, but for wildly different reasons.
Actually, the start of 1956 begins with the end of 1955. So with Mercedes out,
like life,
yeah,
right?
That's like life. Yeah, there's no pause button.
Yeah.
With Mercedes out, everyone expected an Italian team domination for this season. However, British driver Tony Brooks surprised everyone by winning a non-championship race at Syracuse, beating, I think he actually beat some of the Maseratis in that race, and he was driving a Connaught, so a British car as well. So everyone was pretty excited with that. It was the first British driver to win a Grand Prix in a British car since 1924. But that's huge.
That's a pretty big achievement, isn't it?
Yes.
And so there is hope for a British resurgence after all. That's if people have forgotten the formal title of this episode, which we can... It's written in the descriptor, but it's called Italy to the Fore.
That's a bit of a giveaway, Luigi.
It is, yeah. So let's talk about Italy to the Fore. And it is sad that Alfa Romeo is gone. So we're going to see how this season goes without them. So Ferrari continued with the Lancia D50s that they had some success with last year, and they actually did regular updates throughout the year. They did, however, make some major changes up front to the car at the beginning of the year, including relocating the fuel tanks to the rear of the car versus the side, and this was to improve stability. Vanwell, one of the British teams, also virtually rebuilt their suspension and created a new multi-tubular space frame chassis. Not an easy thing to say. And this was designed by a certain Colin Chapman. So as a result of this change, Vanwell had a much smoother body to improve the aero. So there's a bit of aerodynamic thinking going on here. And Colin Chapman is a bit of a legend.
He is, and we've got a bit of a Colin Chapman Vanwell surprise this season as well. So, but it's interesting that the aero period has started, because I think Enzo Ferrari is famous for saying you only need aero if you can't build a fast engine. So that says a lot about Ferrari, doesn't it? But yeah, I think we'll see them come a bit late to the whole aero thing. But it's happening. Those technological advancements are happening.
Yeah, and they're going to accelerate. It's going to get more and more intense. So for those of you that may not know who Colin Chapman is, he is a very super fast version. And this summary was written by myself based off the top of my head. So I'm around the mark. So he founded the Lotus F1 team and the production car brand. So the Lotus cars you see now have a lineage to him back from this era. He was an innovator with many Formula One innovations attributed to him. He pushed designs to the extreme limits, so much so that many drivers actively did not want to drive his cars because of their perceived fragility. Now, that fragility was not just because they thought the car would break down, because most drivers would pick a faster car that would break down over a slower car that doesn't, but because of the danger to their lives. Because if the car's going to break down at high speed, you may not come back to get into the repaired car.
That's a little bit, I guess I can understand that, actually. Yes, and at this point, he has a very long association with racing. At this point in his career, he's already registered the Lotus Engineering brand as a business, apparently with a £25 loan from his wife, and had already built a series of successful sports cars through the 1950s. So he's well into his kind of, era of design and building fast cars.
While working at Vanwell.
Yes.
Because he's the one that created this fancy new car. But hey, that's fair enough.
Yep.
That's what innovators do. They're not limited by something called a job.
Yes.
So, good on him.
Other people's money. Yeah.
Yeah. So other teams were in action. Maserati experimented with fuel injection as well as disc brakes. These were things that Van Wert and Connor were also exploring. But isn't it interesting? We're talking about the 1950s here. Now, a lot of those things like fuel injection, to my relative mechanical naivety, I think fuel injection reached mainstream road cars in Australia maybe in the 80s.
Yes.
I remember there being, to those that are Australian listeners, there's something called a Holden Commodore, which is a General Motors branded car. General Motors bought the Holden company. And I remember them doing advertising campaigns with fuel injection.
Yes, yeah.
And here we are in 1956.
And also at this time, so BRM had disappeared for 5 years, but now they were under new ownership of Sir Alfred Owen, someone else that we do need to keep an eye on. But BRM, do you remember that they just turned up one race after qualifying, and they were just allowed to start at the end of the cars. So strange. But they're back. They're back and under new ownership. And
after a 5-year absence. Yeah,
5 years they were missing. And they they weren't very successful in that first 5 years, were they? But they had a new car. It was the BRM P25, and it was a very simple design, and it was much more lightweight and compact. So, we'll see how they go this year.
Okay. We also had another new car enter the field, but only for one race, and it's an absolute legend brand, another Italian team called Bugatti. However, it was massively underdeveloped and abandoned after just one race.
Oh, that's a shame.
Interesting. It is a shame. But while it was underdeveloped, it did have one very futuristic idea. Its engine was placed behind the cockpit. So I think this may be the first time a rear-engined car entered the Formula One World Championship. I know that there were rear-engined cars back in the pre-war era, but I'm not sure why they disappeared. Maybe some research I should do later.
Yep.
But for the time being, Bugatti got a bit of attention with this one outing. Pity it didn't do much, though.
Did it ever come back, Louis, to Formula One? Like after this period?
Bugatti?
I don't think so.
I can't recall.
No. I mean,
they may have, but if they did, it wasn't material.
No.
A bit like how we don't cover the drivers that don't really
make an impact. I mean, they were known as having like the fastest road car. Isn't that one of their like claims to fame?
Yeah, production sports car.
Car.
So maybe they've gone down a different path,
a
different business model.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we also had a pretty hectic, silly season, as we call it nowadays. With Mercedes' exit, Moss and Fangio were both looking for new drives, and Hawthorn was forced to leave Ferrari again after they wouldn't release him to drive for Jaguar sports car events. Yes, because they also had cars in those events and they didn't want to compromise their chances of winning those events. So Moss really wanted to drive British again. So he tried out all the three British contenders, Connaught, BRM and Van Wert, but he thought Maserati would give him the best chance of beating Fangio to the World Championship. So they got his signature as the number one driver and also paid him £500 per race. I think they were also pretty lenient with him able to drive in other races as well. So he pretty much became like the number one driver at Maserati. It was a weird year for Maserati though, because there's about 13 drivers that drive for them this year. Villarace's in there, Taruffi comes back, Gonzalez and Bera, and even Hawthorn races for them in one race. So the rules are very loose.
If there's a benefit.
Yeah,
not only that, but if there's a benefit, I'm not sure if they are all considered as part of the one team, but if Moss is the number one driver, then he's got lots of cars to jump into.
That's true.
If his car breaks down or something.
That's true.
So that must have been a strategy of his, especially in this era of very high retirement.
Yes, yeah. So Fangio ended up signing for Ferrari alongside Castellotti and your mate Luigi Musso and Englishman Peter Collins. So Ferrari had a had a mixed. They had Fangio, the world champs. I bet they were excited about that. And Hawthorn ended up signing with BRM with two other English drivers, Tony Brooks and Ron Flockhart. But as I said, he also drove for Maserati and Vanwall. So it's going to be a very interesting year for Hawthorn, I think. And
yeah, jumping around's not normally a good thing, is it?
No. I mean, it does say that you're a good driver getting into any car, but it'll be interesting to see how he performs in so many different cars. And then finally, just because, we're Australian here and this is also a big name in F1, Brabham is back, but he's back as a privateer in his own Maserati 250F.
And I'm going to challenge you on that. It's not because he's an Aussie. He deserves to be mentioned.
He's a big name. Yep, he's a very successful.
Very big name.
Yeah, big name. Absolutely.
Apology accepted.
Okay.
Okay. So, and just a reminder, we still only have the 5 best results counting towards the Drivers' Championship in a 7-race season. And just to remind us all, 7 races being the 7 we count, the Indy 500 is still technically part of the Drivers' Championship, but as we know, no one crosses over.
Yeah, because the French and German races are back, but the Dutch and Spanish races are cancelled because of some little crisis called the Suez Canal crisis, Luigi.
Interesting.
Yeah, so apparently, because that was all about fuel and the transportation of fuel, and the cost of fuel just went up in those countries, and because of those kind of economic issues, the Ps were cancelled.
It's interesting how some races in Europe said, we're going ahead, and some are, no, we're out.
Yes.
There's something else going on other than that. That's the excuse they use.
Yeah, I'm not going to delve into their fiscal and economic policies.
Yeah, where's your audit? Audit of the Dutch and Spanish Grand Prix organisers of 1956.
Yeah, that's right.
That would be one hell of an audit to do.
Yes.
There'd be so little information to work from.
I'd say they'd fail big time.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the first race. So race 1 of 7, the Argentinian Grand Prix. As it seems to be the norm now, it's in January of the year, so January 22. There's 98 laps. Not many drivers in this race, only 13 drivers, and a 4x3x4 grid formation. So the grid was actually made up entirely of Italian cars. Ferrari and Maserati both fielded 5 cars each, with the other 3 entrants being privateer Maseratis, including Hawthorn for BRM. Why did I write Hawthorn for BRM when I said they were all Italian cars? So he must have been lent out from them.
Yeah, he was driving for BRM, but he borrowed a Maserati to do it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I see. Now
that is so weird, isn't it? It's like someone handing, I don't know, Albon a Red Bull, but he's still driving for Williams. Like, it's just...
Yeah, and they just painted the Williams colours.
Yes. It's so weird. But yes.
That is weird.
On the race record, he's got BRM next to his name, but he's driving a Maserati.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder if they bought the car.
I don't think so. I think he borrowed it. He borrowed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
That's okay. No worries.
So the qualifying for this race was Saturday, and nearly all the drivers waited until the cool of the evening because that's when the track was at its fastest.
Yeah, that sort of happens now too, doesn't it? But in those days, they wouldn't have had all the telemetry and all the technical data. So they were just, I guess, aware of the impacts of temperature on their lap time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were with it. It's not like they were in the dark ages going, let's just go fast.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So Fangio was one of the first drivers out, and after only a few laps, he had a technical issue. So he returned to the pits and took Luigi Musso's car. So despite this hindrance, this Luigi Musso, is this his first drive in the Ferrari? I think it may be.
I think it may be, yes.
Yeah, so despite this hindrance, Fangio finished the evening 2.2 seconds ahead of his teammates Castellotti and Musso.
Wow, that is pretty impressive considering he was new to the team.
Yeah, just straight into the car, just stamping his authority, right?
Yeah. Do we really expect anything less from Fangio, though? No.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if the other drivers harboured ambitions until that happened. You know, 2.2 seconds, smash.
Yeah.
So it was Ferrari 1, 2, 3, with Berra in the Maserati grabbing fourth, only 0.1 second ahead of his esteemed teammate Speedy Gonzalez.
Yeah, well, Moss also had an interesting race to remember, though. He had qualified a seventh and the fourth fastest Maserati, but then on race day, he was involved in an unusual racing incident. A car that was being pushed to the start line actually ran over his foot, Luigi. So he was hopping around for a few seconds. He got into his car, he refused medical help, and he went.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, he just went.
Yep.
So, I mean, I was thinking when I heard about this, if this happened in 2024, who would this driver be?
Oh, no.
And my initial thought was Daniel Ricciardo, because for those of you that know, we're recording this in February 2024. And there are times when I've seen Ricciardo really be hit with some unlucky moments, like the Melbourne Grand Prix when he was driving for the Renault, which I think was 2019 or 2020. And then he broke his hand during one of the practice sessions in 2023. So those are pretty bad luck incidences, things that are sort of outside of your control.
Yes, but I know you were really thinking of Charlie Leclerc, weren't you? And that is 100% not fair. He's had pretty bad luck.
Well, yeah, the Monaco curse. I mean, he can't
No.
he can't do anything at Monaco. He can get pole position and not even start in pole.
Yeah.
So he's pretty special in that regard.
Yes. Yes.
So the race start of this race, Musso, knowing that he had to give his car up to Fangio in practice and not being happy, charged into the lead from third place. And then Gonzalez, who qualified fifth, took the lead soon after.
Wow, that's a pretty good start. Third and fifth leading the race. You don't see that in today's era of F1.
No. So it doesn't even end there, because I'm going to struggle with this guy's name. I've been struggling with this name all the time. Mendetigui?
Yeah, Mendetigui. I would say Mendetigui.
Mendetigui.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call him Mendetigui. Mendetigui.
Yeah.
Mendy. Can I just call him Mendy?
Yeah, let's call him Mendy. Yeah. Sorry, It's no disrespect to Mendetigui. It's just, we're not very good with names.
No. So Mendy took over the lead and he qualified in sixth place, and he was still in the lead by lap 10 and actually starting to pull away from second place Moss, who was in second place having qualified himself seventh.
So hang on. After lap 10, using qualifying as a reference, it was sixth, seventh, and who?
Well, then it was Castellotti, who actually qualified second.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like there was a lot of nonsense starts there to me. Where was Hawthorne?
Yeah. Well, he'll be mentioned later.
Okay.
So for now, he's probably enjoying watching the nonsense starts all around him, because he invented the nonsense start, according to Mike Lane.
Yes.
Yeah. So by lap 23, Fangio was out and he had fuel pump issues, and he was simply not competitive either. So he was having a bit of a bad day. And then I've made a mistake. Musso was called in, and I should have aligned myself with not the number 3 Ferrari driver, because not only he's given his car to Fangio in practice straight away almost, but he's already handing his car over to Fangio right at the start. So I wish his name wasn't Luigi Musso. That's the problem here. So basically, Fangio resumed in fifth place in Musso's car. So Fangio quickly passed Berra in the Maserati and was moving forward rapidly. Then he spun again, and he had to resume his chase again from fifth place. In the meantime, Moss, who was in second place, started emitting a thin trail of smoke, and Castellotti was now in second place because of that, and he was now the leading Ferrari driver, but not for long.
Gosh, there's so many retirements in this race.
Yeah, this was a tough one to keep track of.
Yeah.
So Fangio, having repassed Berra again, now found himself in second place and began closing up on Moss, who was now leading, despite the thin trail of blue smoke. But Moss's car was now misfiring as well and sounding worse each lap.
It sounds like it's just a matter of time before he retires too.
So let's not forget, this is the Argentinian Grand Prix. So on lap 61, Fangio, the Argentinian, went by into the lead, passing the ailing Moss. Berra was next to pass the ailing Moss as well. And after this, who, may I add, never wins an F1 race and is somewhat famous for this, put in a great effort to try and catch and pass Fangio. But after a spin, Berra decided to settle for second place. So amazingly, I mentioned Hawthorn.
Mm.
Hawthorn finished third after a quiet nonsense start watching race. So he watched the nonsense start.
Yeah, he kept out of trouble.
And don't forget, he was in a Maserati branded BRM.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, good on him. But Luigi, there's more. You remember our Ferrari manager, Ugolini? The guy that just...
Yes, was he was the one that told the Ferrari drivers to let Fangio pass?
Well, he said slow down because they're not... Yeah, slow down and they're going to get disqualified from the race.
Yeah, Fangio's going to get disqualified.
Yes, that guy. Yeah. Well, he's now the manager of Maserati. I don't know why Maserati would have taken him on. But anyway, so once again, he presented a protest against Fangio, claiming that Fangio had been push-started by unauthorised persons after his spin earlier in the race. Guess what happened? The protest was rejected by the stewards. So he lodged his complaint to the FIA, who also rejected it.
Ugolini. I think we're going to have to create a quote for you as a reference to failed protests. Like, don't do an Ugolini. Because he's not had a very good win ratio on those.
Not at all. At least this time he didn't screw up and he didn't actually throw the win away.
Yeah. Yeah, at least he did. At least he had nothing to lose.
That's right.
So he's learned. So just before we move on, before you do the championship standings, Rosa, there are two things to note. Luigi Musso has actually won an F1 race. He wins this race. So my namesake, my current temporary hero, despite handing his car to Fangio, technically he does win this race with Fangio.
Okay.
And while Berra did not win this race, he came second, he actually got more points than the winner because it took two drivers in that leading car to actually beat him.
He's a funny...
So poor Berra, even when he gets more points, he still doesn't
win the race. Yes. Yeah. So the World Driver Championship standings are Berra, driving for Maserati, on 6 points. Fangio, 5. Musso, 4. And Hawthorn, 4.
So now we're up to the second race of the season, up to the Monaco Grand Prix. This is on May 13th. So again, like a 5-month gap from the first race to this race. There are probably non-championship races in between, of course. 100 laps in this race, and there were 18 drivers on this track, and it was a 3x2x3x2 grid. So regarding the track itself, the race organisers made a change to the track after the Ascari into the harbour incident of 1955. What they did was they made the chicane after the tunnel more acute so that the cars would reach the harbour front at a much slower speed, hence reducing the chances of another harbour-side swim by an F1 car.
That's interesting. Okay. And the BRMs are in this race. But before they had even started, they had valve problems. So both Hawthorn and Brooks were non-starters.
So Hawthorn not having a great start to the year.
It's really not.
Yeah. So to the race itself, for the first practice day, they actually offered a £100 for the fastest lap time, which Fangio duly won with 1 minute 44.2.
Now, £100 in 1955, like if you convert that, I think it's about £2,400 today. Pretty good money. I think back then it got you a cow, but it's still pretty good money.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, you said that earlier that Moss was being paid £500 a race.
Yes. Yep.
So 5 cows?
Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah. So about, I don't know, 10,000, 12,000 pounds, I guess, a race in today's money.
Not much for today's standards. What's Hamilton getting?
God, yeah. Well, he just
I don't even want to do the calculation. It's too depressing.
Yeah.
Anyway, to the qualifying time. So that reward was worked up to make that Thursday interesting, because when it came to qualifying times, the times did get better, and the Fangio in the Lancia Ferrari got pole with 1 minute 44.0, followed by Moss in the Maserati and Castellotti in the other Lancia Ferrari. So it was a warm summer day, and at race start, Moss charged into the lead. We know what Monaco can be like to pass, but let's see what this race is like. So Moss charged into the lead, followed by Castellotti, and Fangio and Shell in the van were behind. Fangio soon passed and caught his teammate Castellotti, but Moss was pulling away steadily, and at the end of the opening lap, he actually led by a whopping 5 seconds.
Wow. So, I mean, if there's the opposite of a nonsense start, Moss just did it right there, or else everyone else just had a combined nonsense start. But that's a pretty good start by Moss.
No, I think you meant Moss did an awesome lap, or everyone else did the nonsense start.
Yes, I did mean that, yes.
Yeah, and I think Moss did do an awesome opening lap. So Fangio, trying to reel in Moss, spun wildly. So that's a bit of a sign of him really pushing it. And he ran into the path of oncoming cars. Castellotti, Collins and Berra somehow managed to squeeze past, but Musso and Shell rammed the straw bales and damaged their cars. Fangio, however, was able to resume in 5th place and set about making up lost time.
That was a very rare mistake by Fangio. I mean, we have seen him be very consistent and very clean in his racing. So maybe he wasn't totally used to the Ferrari yet.
So within 10 laps, Fangio had re-caught and passed his teammate Castellotti. I'm sure there was a bit of waving going on there.
Yes.
Then passed Berra in the Maserati. So by lap 25, he took over 2nd place as Collins, his teammate, actually did wave him through.
Wow. Pin this, everyone. Pin it. Monaco, waved through by Collins to Fangio. Also, what was he even doing up in 2nd place? He qualified 9th, even behind Perdissa, who qualified 7th. That's just a fantastic start by Collins, isn't it? And he's in the Ferrari.
Yeah, these are amazing results by these drivers at a very difficult track to pass on.
Yes.
So it was at this time that people noticed that Fangio's driving was off, as he had been hitting numerous curbs. So much so that by lap 32, he clouted a wall on the harbour front and actually bent a rear wheel. So on lap 40, Fangio charged into the pits and handed his car to Castellotti.
Hang on a minute. You said he had a bent rear wheel. He's giving now like a damaged car to someone else to drive at Monaco? Did they fix it? Tell me they fixed it at least.
Yeah. Who knows? I think this season becomes an interesting season of fixing things, actually.
All right.
And you can only hope, because Castellotti's still driving.
Yes.
So anyway, I also had similar concerns about this tyre issue, because Fangio doesn't really have a soft spot for other Argentinians, but Castellotti is Italian, not Argentinian. So I think it's okay that they're going to risk Castellotti in that car, because if he was an Argentinian, they probably would have said, Fangio said, keep the wheel damaged.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So Castellotti resumed in the now dangerous Lancia Ferrari in 5th place. So he was, I think he was given a promotion for his position.
Okay.
So at half distance, Moss was leading Collins by 32 seconds, who was in turn 15 seconds ahead of Berra. Then came Castellotti in the damaged Lancia Ferrari, having moved up to 4th.
Well, good on him. That's pretty good with a damaged wheel.
Yeah, I think it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've replaced the wheel, but still, it's funny to think that the wheel. It's funny to think the wheel was damaged and he was still going for it, and moving up to fourth place.
But if I just don't understand if they fixed it, why Fangio didn't get back in it. Maybe he just didn't want to waste time in the pits. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Because on lap 54, Collins was called in to hand his car to Fangio. Now, Collins was in second place behind Moss, despite the fact that despite the fact that Collins himself was slowly closing up on Moss.
What? Again? We have to really take note of this now. Collins is now giving his car to Fangio while catching the leader.
Yeah.
What?
So Collins, first of all, waved Fangio through earlier in the race, and now he's giving Fangio his car.
When he is close to catching up on the leader. I think I'm going to have to put Collins in the nice guy category of racing car drivers, Luigi. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's not remember this double pin Monaco moment because it comes back. Yeah. So Fangio resumed the race in third place, and it didn't take long for him to take second place away from Berra. By lap 70, and remember this is a 100-lap race, Fangio was now 47 seconds behind Moss. Then, on lap 86, Moss was about to lap his teammate Perdissa.
Perdissa is coming up more and more, I've noticed. He might not be a supporting driver anymore, Luigi.
We might need to give him a little bit of airtime.
Yes, we might, yes.
Yeah. So when Moss was lapping Perdissa, Perdissa's brakes locked and caused the two cars to come into contact. So while damage was minor, the bonnet attachment on Moss's car was broken, which resulted in the bonnet lifting on some of the corners.
No way. This is not a good sign. At Monaco as well, where everything's so tight. And there's less what? There's less than 14 laps to go.
Yeah, and Perdissa is Moss's teammate, and he caused this.
Maybe I spoke too soon.
But he's getting attention for the wrong reasons.
That's right.
You know? Yeah. So Fangio is now less than 30 seconds behind and catching Moss by about 2 seconds per lap. I'm surprised it's only that much if you've got your bonnet popping up every now and then. But Moss kept his head, and despite Fangio achieving a fastest lap on the final lap, 1 minute 44.4, enough for second on the grid, Moss went on to win by just 6.1 seconds.
Wow, that was a lot of drama in that race. And a great win by Moss. Yeah. He led this race from start to finish to win his second GP. Pretty good.
Yeah, and Moss and Fangio, I think, drove all the Ferraris.
Yes.
I think he did, because we didn't talk about how he got out of the other one to get into Collins'
one. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, good on him too.
Anyway.
So the World Driver Championship standings are now Berra on 10, Fangio on 9, Moss on 8, Musso on 4, and Hawthorn on 4.
Yeah, so Berra leading the championship still. Yeah, still leading the championship.
Yes.
There you go, and having not won a race. Good on him. Okay, we're up to the Belgian Grand Prix. This is race 3 of 7. So this race took place on the 3rd of June, so not long after the Monaco race. It's a 36-lap race, 15 drivers, and a 3x2x3 grid formation. So practice actually started on Thursday evening, and while Moss set a very impressive time of 4 minutes 14.7 in his Maserati, it was actually Fangio who blew everyone away with 4 minutes 9 seconds 0.8. So that's pretty much 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Even Fangio's teammate Collins in third could do no better than 4 minutes 15.3. And he also did this in much less favourable conditions to Thursday night. So Collins' team time, which was the third fastest time, was actually considered really impressive.
Yeah, and 5 seconds, or nearly 5 seconds clear of Moss. Yeah, so it's always very tight on the front row, isn't it? Everything, all the qualifying times are very tight in this era.
Yeah, not this particular race, but most of the others. It's just, I mean, every now and then someone just shines, and Fangio just shone big time.
Yep.
Yeah. So on race day, it was actually raining when the flag fell on Sunday, and Moss again charged into the lead, and Fangio was slow off the mark, and he actually fell back to 5th place over the Eau Rouge Bridge. However, not for long. By lap 5, Fangio had passed Berra, Collins and Castellotti, and then he took the lead and began to draw away. So that's when he actually took the lead himself.
We are missing his main opponent, aren't we, in Ascari? I mean, Ascari has always been right up there with him, but it just sort of feels like Fangio's on his own now and no one really out there, no real number one driver of other teams shaking him up. But I guess that's what he's probably enjoying it, but yeah, it feels a bit sad.
Yeah, I'm sure he was feeling the sadness himself, because when you think about what we missed out on with Shoemaker when Senna passed away in 94, we were taken away a really good rivalry.
Yeah, yes.
That was going to expand.
Yeah.
And we're probably seeing what Shoemaker went through in those days when Senna passed away. I suspect it's something similar for those that have a memory that long.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so by lap 10, Fangio was now 8 seconds ahead of Moss, so he really was in a class of his own, with Collins in 3rd place a further 10 seconds behind. So this race really had gapped out by this stage. Drama then happened. So as he was climbing up Eau Rouge, Moss's car began to snake as one of his tyres actually flew off.
What? The whole thing? It just flew off?
Yeah.
Lucky he was going uphill.
Yeah. Makes you wonder how, because he managed to, the term that Book used, the Grand Prix by Mike Lang, was Moss then ran back to the pits. Now, they didn't clarify if it was car or person. So
I reckon.
I don't know how these cars drive with 3 wheels. I'm not sure how good they were with 3 wheels.
I was just about to say they wouldn't have been able to drive on 3 wheels. I reckon he legged it big time.
Yeah, yeah. And not in the gentlemanly walking with a martini and cigar way, but in a Jesse Owens, using people of the time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And for those younger people, Usain Bolt way.
Yes.
So he actually went back to the pits to take over Perdisa's car.
Oh, Perdisa again. I think, again, this guy's had like the worst luck. He has he's number 2 to everyone. So, but yeah, if he gets mentioned again, we'll have to do a little bit more research on him.
Absolutely. And this is part 1 of a 2-parter. And I've got a fairly good feeling Perdisa's going to appear again. Okay. So Moss resumed in 6th place in Perdisa's car and was now well over a lap behind Fangio and Collins. By half distance, Fangio and Collins were way out in front, running about 30 seconds apart. So this is becoming one of those little bit of a boring races. Until lap 24, Fangio's transmission failed out on the circuit, leaving Collins with a comfortable lead.
Good old-fashioned Ferrari reliability. Had to hit him sometime, I guess.
In the meantime, Moss, taking advantage of retirement and aggressive driving, pushed, and he set the fastest lap on lap 30, and he actually matched his own qualifying time, which is pretty challenging, and forged his way past Berra to take 3rd place. In the meantime, Collins crossed the line to win his first championship race, leading a Lancia Ferrari 1-2 with Fore 2nd and Moss in Perdisa's car in 3rd.
Okay, so we've got a bit of a change now in the standings. We've got Collins on 11, tied with Moss also on 11. Berra has slipped to 3rd on 10 points and Fangio 4th with 9 points.
Talk about tight after 3 races, 3 races out of 7. So we're sort of at the halfway mark of the season, and there's only 2 points in it between 4 drivers.
There's 2 teams only on the top 4. But yeah, interesting. Louis, we're going to leave it there. I think it's a good time to take a bit of a break, and we'll come back with second part of 1956 next week. We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, go and sign up at patreon.com/F1 Time Portal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references, which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.